Story number 1. For over 6 years, I was in a relationship with my most recent serious partner, and for the entirety of those 6 years, I was consistently on Facebook receiving pokes from a person. Due to the fact that we shared approximately 30 friends, I didn't give it much thought. I reasoned that it was possible that I had encountered them at some point in the past. Aside from that, he was muscular and fairly beautiful, so I suppose that the additional attention was actually rather enjoyable. A couple of weeks after my ex-boyfriend and I had ended our relationship, he sent me a private message asking if we could get together. Following some time spent conversing with him, I eventually gave in and agreed to accompany him to a supper. That was a really lovely one on first terms. We had a nice lunch, we went for a walk beneath the stars, and so on and so forth. After spending a few weeks with him, I became aware of several peculiarities in his conduct that I believed to be very peculiar. Whenever I tried to enter his home, he would always refuse and instead leave me standing outside. One day at 10:30 p.m, I was standing outside of his house for 45 minutes. Despite the fact that we had walked there, due to the fact that I was completely clueless about my whereabouts, he came to the conclusion that I had given him the hump for no apparent reason. At this point, I ought to have found a way to escape. It was the following Friday that I decided to invite him round, since I thought it would be best to give him the benefit of the doubt. 9 days were spent by him there. In order to get him out of the house, I had to send a friend a text message requesting her to pick me up rather than inviting him. After giving it some thought, I decided to put it off until the following day, when he would show up at my house. When I told him that I wasn't feeling very well and that I had a really nasty urinary tract infection, he responded by accusing me of cheating and even calling me a slag. Both of these statements were met with a lot of criticism. I finally reached my breaking point and I told him to go and not to bother getting in touch with me any longer. Every day, I was inundated with missed calls and texts, and I also received missed calls. Due to the fact that I had blocked him on Facebook, he sent messages to all of my friends, pleading with them to persuade me to take him back. Oh, no way. I anticipated that after a period of time he would retract his position. Things were rather quiet for about a week. I was in a state of euphoria until I got a call from a number that I was not familiar with. It was inquiring about the identity of the individual who had just materialized in front of my door. By the way, it was because of my father. This occurred each and every time a person walked in front of my apartment, regardless of whether they were a male or a female. It was revealed that he was acquainted with a person who lived directly across the street from me and who had him and his lovely girlfriend following my every decision. After having a conversation with the couple and conveying the anguish that it had caused me, things returned to their normal state. It was communicated to them that he was still present with me and that he was concerned about my well-being. Until one day, when I concluded my work and caught the home, I was under the impression that he had received the message, for the purpose of ensuring that I would always arrive at my estate at 6 o'clock in the evening. I had this exactly scheduled. When I was walking down the hill to my estate, I observed a figure hidden in the shadows in the corner. I was getting ready to go through the alley to get to the garages when I realized that the figure was there. He was the one. In order to get to my front door, I kept my head held high and marched forward. He stayed behind me for a considerable amount of time, until I reached the entrance, at which point he sprinted after me and chased me up the stairs in the apartment complex where I resided. I let him know that I was not interested in him, that he was frightening me, and that he required assistance. And it was at this point that he had the idea that perhaps a hug would convince me to change my attitude about this matter. After my neighbor let out a loud scream, he was escorted out of the building and informed that if he returned, it would most likely be the last thing he had ever done. This was the final thing he had ever done. My experience has taught me that I should not date people I meet on Facebook, and that I should at the very least conduct a background check on any potential partners. Story number 2. I am a man in my late 20s, who is uninteresting, has a secure career, and a family who is content with their lives. I had never even considered the possibility that I might one day become the target of a stalker because of the circumstances that I was in. For the purpose of serving as a cautionary tale to everyone, I will tell you that you do not need to be a typical gorgeous young lady in order to attract the attention of a stalker. Whether or not this makes sense, I am someone who uses Facebook on a regular basis, but I do so in a very casual manner. Although I don't post very much, I do read my newsfeed rather frequently. Before going to bed on a Saturday night, I was doing a quick round on Facebook before I received a friend request. I was doing this before I went to bed. Without any doubt, I agreed to take it. Since I never publish anything that may be considered very personal, I am able to accept almost every friend request that comes my way. In the past, I have mentioned that I take a pretty relaxed approach to social networking. I took a cursory look at the profile of the person who had friended me, and I instantly saw that it was an obviously false account. After putting my computer away and falling asleep, I failed to give it much thought. In spite of the fact that I had entirely forgotten about the friend request that had been sent the previous evening, I was eating lunch at the home of a friend the next day. After hearing a vibration on my phone, I checked to see if I had received a message from Maya, who is one of my co-workers. Despite the fact that Maya and I worked together and shared a few friends outside of the workplace, we did not communicate very often with one another outside of the context of our professional lives. Assuming it was something related to work, I checked it out. Thinking about it now, I suppose you could say that it was. To give you an idea of the situation, the Facebook account that friended me also friended Maya, and it had been sending her a barrage of insults and charges that she was a expletive in every name in the book. After that, the person went one step further and sent a message to Maya's husband, claiming that she was having an affair with a co-worker during their marriage. Considering that I was the only other person who accepted the friend request, Maya was curious as to whether or not I was aware of the identity of the individual. I told to her that I am willing to fulfill any request, but I am not aware of who made the request. I then went ahead and removed the profile in issue from my friend list. Maya told me that she already had ideas about who it was, but she wanted to see if I could confirm them. She said that she simply wanted to make sure. Her assumption was that it was Carrie. Before we go any farther, let's go back a few weeks. An invitation to become a friend had been sent to me by Carrie. In spite of the fact that we worked at the same location, we had never met, never talked to one another, never made eye contact, and had never been within 20 feet of each other. This was something that struck me as strange. Despite the fact that we worked in different departments, I had to walk through her department in order to get to our lounge. Thus, I had to walk past her every day. At that point, our interactions had reached their most distant point. It wasn't until she added me as a friend on Facebook that I became aware of her name, and subsequently I recognized her photo. Exactly how she came to know my name is a mystery to me. Additionally, Carrie added my wife as a friend on her site, and she then proceeded to browse through the year's worth of postings and images that my wife had uploaded, liking and commenting on a number of them. It appeared as though she was familiar with both of us, as she started interacting with my posts. At work, however, I would stroll by, as I normally would, and there would be no interaction at all. Although it seemed strange to me, I didn't delve into it too much. Now, let's return to the present. Maya continued to be harassed by the strange Facebook account until she finally admitted to her that she was aware that it was Carrie and that she was going to report it to the authorities. I was under the impression that everything had happened was over, but oh, was I mistaken. Over the course of a few weeks, increased numbers of girls who were interested in hooking up with me started sending me friend requests. In spite of the fact that I was aware that each of them was a phony, I chose to disregard them for the most part. My Google and Facebook accounts started sending me messages about suspicious behavior on my profile, and I also started receiving these notifications. The vast majority of the time, it alerted me to unsuccessful efforts to log in. A particular one that I can recall specifically mentioned that my Facebook account had been signed in from an unexpected location and inquired as to whether or not it was me there. For some reason, I didn't care at the moment, despite the fact that it wasn't me and that I ought to have been more concerned about it. The fact that I did not bother to reset my password even after that demonstrates how foolish I am. At the time, I considered each of these occurrences to be a random occurrence that occurred in isolation. The contents of my account were devoid of any valuable items, and I did not have any private or confidential messages. In what way might they possibly cause harm? After a few months have passed, my wife receives a message from Carrie in which she informs her that she has recently purchased a high-end video camera and is interested in beginning some amateur filmmaking. In order to assist her, she inquired as to whether or not we could grant her permission to record our family for a day. Despite my reluctance, I decided to give Carrie the benefit of the doubt because I was reminded of what Maya had said a few months before. As a result, we came to an agreement with her that we would set aside a time for her whenever we were not occupied, and we left it at that. Again, I have not yet had the opportunity to meet Carrie in person. After a few more weeks had passed, Carrie sent me a message where she informed me that we had entirely forgotten about organizing the film shoot. No, I did not accept her. After that, things started to get strange. She submitted a number of GIF images that contained stick figures performing gyrations and actions that were sexually inappropriate. She asked, "Funny, isn't it?" because I did not react to her question. When I saw the messages, I quickly sent a text message to my wife asking her to get into my Facebook login. In an effort to avoid being impolite, I concurred with Carrie's assessment of the humorous nature of the gifts that she had provided and continued the conversation. After that, she proceeded to give me old images from my defunct MySpace account, which I had entirely forgotten about. It was at that time that MySpace underwent a redesign, and as a result, many people lost a great deal of memories that they held dear. In some mysterious way, she unearthed mine and made the decision to give them to me. It gave me a creepy feeling. Things immediately became very serious after that point. She started complaining about her body and how she was not pretty in an attempt to entice me to appreciate her appearance by providing me with a compliment. She did not possess a lovely appearance, but she was a desirable individual. However, I did not take a bite. Then, out of the blue, she surprised me with something they said. She questioned me about my penis, referring to it as my uppy, and implying that it was probably quite large. I made the decision that that was sufficient and stopped replying. Naturally, my wife was reading the entire time, and we were exchanging texts about how hilarious and strange everything was. We were both wondering what was going on. Despite the fact that I continued to go to work, I was still unable to meet Carrie ever in person. I really didn't want to engage in any talks after that, especially not with anyone. Once more, Carrie sent me a message in which she requested a favor from me. Carrie wanted me to examine Maya's page to verify her suspicions that Maya was complaining about her. Maya had blocked her profile, and Carrie feared that Maya was saying negative things about her. I informed her that I would not be following Maya around for her, and that was just the end of it. In the interest of complete secrecy, however, I did check, and the answer is that Maya could not care less about wasting her time talking about Carrie. My wife received a text message from an unknown number when she was around this time. Even though they were aware of her name, the person was attempting to conceal their identity while flirting with her about it. At that time, we were with a group of friends, and we all thought it would be hilarious if we all text flirted with this individual at the same time in order to irritate them. Once more, I never once considered the possibility of a connection between any of the occurrences. In the end, Carrie left her job and I never saw her again. However, I continued to receive friend requests and suspicious activity, which I foolishly continued to disregard. It was almost as if I had forgotten about Carrie. I say that it's been more than a year since then, when my wife gives me a bomb. I was sending her highly inappropriate messages on Facebook, according to a text message that she received from a close friend of ours. Throughout the day, I had been really busy running errands, and as a result, I hadn't actually visited my Facebook account. When I finally had the opportunity to log back on, I discovered that my password had been altered. It was also evident that all of my messages had been deleted. Before I started hearing from others that I was being very provocative and unpleasant to them, I had no idea the gravity of what had occurred. I had no notion what had transpired. The problem was that these were not random women on my friend list who were on the receiving end of the attack. These were women who were very close to me. They were my good friends, the sisters of my wife, and the wives of my friends. Additionally, these communications did not have any reservations. What I intended to do to them was described in graphic detail, and they went all out to express it. I experienced a profound sense of humiliation and violation. I was unable to fathom how the women were suffering. We were very close to our families and friends, and every other week or so, all of our friends would get together to drink, barbecue, watch movies or sports, and just hang out. My wife and I were very close to our families and friends. When we had a number of families over, we never had any issues with any of them. Every one of them stated that they were aware of what had occurred and that they are certain that it was not me. On a deeper level, however, I was able to perceive that they had the impression that it was most likely that it was me behind it. Over the course of time, an increasing number of people stopped coming over, to the point that my house began to sense a sense of emptiness. The feeling that they believe it was me was something that I revealed in my wife, and she responded by saying that I was just being overly paranoid. It was her contention that our friends were simply preoccupied with their own lives and that they would eventually visit us once they had more time on their hands. After that, I found out that someone had made a Facebook account with my name and photo on it, and that they had continued to harass the same women. On Facebook, one of them shared a picture of the discussion that I had with this fictitious version of myself. Because the unknown person had used several words that I would normally use, she made the observation that it was possible that it was actually me at all. In addition, she mentioned that the individual had a deep familiarity with my family and friends. After reading that, my heart broke into a million pieces. I stopped monitoring my Facebook for a considerable amount of time, and I believe that this caused me to experience a moderate sadness. I was in a terrible mood. I confided in my wife that I desired to vanish, and I really pondered quitting my work of 7 years and going away in order to begin a new life. I am now aware that I was acting in a very crazy manner, and I am happy that my wife remained strong for me during the entire ordeal. I was under the impression that I needed to defend my honor, so I began to collect alibis of the times, people, and places that I was present during the time that many of those messages were being sent. It is true that my wife informed me in a harsh manner that she couldn't believe I was so weak that I would allow a no-leafer idiot on Facebook to put me down and make me feel that way. Throughout my entire life, I have always been a highly psychologically powerful person. I always try to see the positive side of a difficult circumstance. But for some reason, this incident had a different impact on me. I am unable to articulate the reason for my intense feelings of shame and remorse for something that I had not even done. I have no idea what would have transpired if it weren't for the support of my wife, who brought me back to the present moment. We suggested to our friends that they should simply ignore the individual, and ultimately everything came to an end. Even though I no longer accept friend requests, I still get them from time to time. However, I no longer accept them, My evidence does not support the claim that Carrie was solely responsible for this. It all took place during a period of time when she was introducing herself into my life, and eventually stopped doing so after she removed herself from it. Despite the fact that my friends have begun to visit me once more, the atmosphere has not been the same ever since that time. I am unsure whether it is them or whether it is just in my head. Carrie was someone who took pleasure in the suffering of other people, as my wife and I came to the realization. After she had finished harassing Maya, she moved on to me and began attempting to destroy my marriage and cut me off from my friends, for no other reason than the fact that she took pleasure in doing so. I have no doubt that she has not ceased harassing me, and the only reason she has left me alone is because she has found another person to torment. Story number 3. It was the night of prom, and I, along with perhaps 5 other girls, all of whom were black and roughly between the ages of 17 and 18, had left the venue and were driving around aimlessly in the hopes of finding a party to attend. At approximately 2 to 3 in the morning, we were going to go hang out with some buddies because every place we went to ended up being a bust or getting caught by the police. At this point in the evening, the roads were nearly entirely devoid of any vehicles because none of us were under the influence of alcohol in any way. This is a crucial point to keep in mind. Our home is located in the rural and suburban areas of Northern Virginia, and the high beams of the automobile are broken, so it is really dark. When Key, the driver, made a turn down a road, he briefly drove in the wrong lane due to the fact that it was quite dark. She simply rectified herself in a calm manner because there was no divider. It only lasted for about 5 seconds and there was no one on the street at the time. At precisely the moment that she locates the appropriate lane, a vehicle that is around 50 to 100 feet behind us activates its headlights and honks its horn. It seemed as though this guy emerged out of nowhere, and I found it really peculiar that he did not have his headlights on because there was a new moon and almost entirely dark outside. As a result, she exclaims, "I'm sorry," while waving her hand out the window, but the guy is not going to accept her apology. Instantaneously, he accelerated, riding on our tail and honking virtually continuously, to the point where we were nearing 60 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone. The fact that we were in a small green Kia and he was in a massive black truck flying a Confederate flag out of the rear of the truck made it easy to understand why we were so afraid. In the end, he even managed to hit our bumper a few times, but thankfully, it was not enough to cause any damage to the vehicle or cause it to move significantly. During the time that we were discussing what to do, whether or not we should call the police, Key made a few fast turns which ultimately resulted in his losing the person. In a parking lot, we come to a stop. We are waiting under the shady tree in complete silence, getting ready to either drive away or contact the police, or both, for a few minutes more. We were hoping that he wouldn't be able to see us, but one of my friends suddenly saw that his truck was parked in a few parking lots away from us. Because of the trees that separated us from him, we were able to see him without any difficulty. Even though my eyesight isn't among the best in the world, I was able to notice him leaping out of the automobile. The individual in question was enormous, both in terms of height and width, and he was waving something around in his arms. Another acquaintance who has more knowledge with firearms than I do draws attention to the fact that it appears to be a shotgun. We stood there for a few seconds, unable to move because of the horror that we were experiencing, as he said something that sounded like, "You all black people need to come out." Immediately after we had all regained our composure, Key shifted the vehicle into drive and drove out of that parking lot as quickly as she could. We were visibly shaken and we headed home straight away so that we could safely freak the ex-bleat out about. While we were on our way home, we made sure to check to see if he was following us the entire time. Story number 4. At the moment, I am a young lady of 22 years old and I am in the process of completing my initial degree from college. Due to the fact that I work and volunteer a lot, I primarily attend classes online. On the other hand, I needed to take only 2 more science subjects in order to graduate this semester, and one of those classes was only available on campus. It is a class that meets twice a week and each lesson lasts approximately 2 hours. However, the instructor typically lets us go after approximately 45 to 60 minutes. Due to the fact that I live quite a distance away from the school, I consistently arrive approximately 15 minutes late, and as a result, I am never summoned for attendance. The instructor is aware of my predicament. All I need to do is inform them that I will be there before I leave the classroom, and then everything will be okay. Although it might not appear to be of much significance, I assure you that it is. In other words, my class will be taking an exam during the next week. We are provided with study guides that are quite comparable to the questions that will be on the actual test. Nevertheless, these study guides are not essential in any way, shape or form for us to pass the test. Quite a few of these things are obvious. At the moment, I'm at the residence of a co-worker where I am now hanging out. When my phone rings, upon checking it, I discovered that I had received a message on Facebook from a source that I was unfamiliar with. So I decided to read the message. I had never heard of this name before, and I do not recall ever hearing it. Due to the fact that it is a quite unusual name, I was somewhat perplexed. The message read, "Hey, I am currently enrolled in your introductory science class. I am in desperate need of a study guide and I would be willing to drive to your place in order to get my hands on one." As soon as I came across this person, I couldn't help but feel a little strange because I have absolutely no idea who he is. In addition to the fact that I do not recognize his name, I do not recognize him from the class. In addition, as I mentioned before, I am virtually never there for attendance, which means that it is not possible to readily explain it as if he saw me answer for my name or anything else. As a result, I am guessing that it is possible that he saw the online roster of the class and then messaged a number of individuals. As a result, I sent a few of my classmates a text message to inquire as to whether or not they had received any communication from this individual. All of them responded in the negative and inquired as to the reason I was interested in knowing. After I had presented the scenario to them, they confirmed that they did not recognize the man's name or face and that they are good students who actually show up to class on time. Therefore, it is evident that I did not respond to the guy's message. And a few hours later, he sent me another message in which he said, "Come on. I know you read this. Now I am even more frightened than I was before. For the past 2 weeks, the instructor has been providing the study guide to the students in the classroom. Therefore, I am at a loss to comprehend the reason why he does not have a copy. Furthermore, considering that there are still a few days left until the test, he might have gotten in touch with the instructor to get a copy. Why would he have only messaged me if he had looked up the roster online? He could have messaged any of my classmates for that matter. It could be that I'm exaggerating, but I get the impression that it's rather creepy." Story number 5. I am a lady in my 20s who is from the United States and a Francophile. I am fluent in French but not a native speaker. Since the year 2011, I have been in communication with a peculiar French individual whom I came into contact with as he was uploading a video clip of an extremely rare film to YouTube. As a result of the fact that we shared a great deal of common interests, we eventually got together in person so that he could hand me the movie on a flash drive. In addition to that, he gave me a book chosen from his own personal library that he believed I would enjoy. We continued to communicate with one another, and I recently took the initiative to repay him by purchasing a DVD from Amazon. I am pleased with it. We have enlightening chats, and he is a nice guy. Nonetheless, he is just peculiar, just as I am. He uses his own name, Jean, as well as an Italian surname and a mythical figure from Gothic literature while he is online. He moves between these identities in a manner that is quite confusing. Specifically, he is a fan of gloomy romanticism. I was familiar with him on Facebook under the name of the character, and for a period of time it was also his email address. However, over the summer of last year he began using an email address that was consistent with his true name. In other words, it was a combination of the two. Due to the fact that he frequently vanishes from Facebook without any prior notice and then reappears as soon as he arrives, it can be challenging to maintain track of him. It is possible that he has gone through 2 or 3 separate accounts, all of which have used the name of the imaginary persona. It did not come as a surprise to me when he disappeared at some point during the fall of last year. All I did was keep my eyes open for him. There are times when I conduct a search, and one day I discovered an account that was associated with his true name, but it was not associated with a fictional identity. There was no picture of his face, but that was to be expected given that he occasionally uses his true name on the internet as well. I included that individual because I believe that if he turned out to be the wrong person, he would either deny my request or send me a message inquiring about how we were acquainted with one another. The fact that he approved my request without inquiring about my identity led me to believe that it was he. When I first started texting him in late February, it appeared that this was supported by the evidence. We've communicated with each other over a little more than 900 messages since then. I started things out where they had left off, stating that it was great to see him again, that I had just been thinking about him, that I was going to send him an email about something, but that I could now tell him about it over Facebook chat, and so on. Initially, he extended a cordial greeting to me, and then, after I had sent him a YouTube video that I believed he would enjoy, he began to talk to me about it. With the benefit of hindsight, I was able to see that he was slightly less articulate than I had remembered, but not to the extent that it became evident. As someone who does not speak French as their first language, I find that the incoherence is not as obvious to me in French as it is in English. And he was peculiar, but that was to be expected. In the month of April, he created a new Facebook account using the name of the fake character. Following the addition of each other, we began speaking on Facebook. The two accounts would be chatting with each other without distinction. Because they were never online at the same time, I would simply chat to whoever was online at the time being discussed. Once more, I could not help but notice that Jean was acting strangely. Whenever I expressed my confusion, he would respond by saying things that were illogical and then refusing to explain his reasoning. It was awkward for me to be around him because he would use phrases of affection that were provocative. Also, he made a lot of errors, which made it difficult to follow what he was saying. All of the errors, all of the cryptic statements and non sequiturs, and all of the flirtation occurred when I was talking to Jean and not when I was talking to the account with the name of the imaginary character. I didn't discover any of these things until much later. In a similar vein, the fake character account was where all of the most legitimate events took place, such as my obtaining his address in order to mail him the DVD. When it came to that particular matter, he was simply more pleasant. During my time with Jean, my true name, I had a few disagreements that were really unpleasant. On the other hand, I was not aware of that at the time because, in all other respects, it appeared like the two accounts were consistent with one another. We talked about the same issues on both, and although the speech patterns were somewhat different, as I mentioned earlier, the fictional character account was more lucid and friendly. There were also obvious commonalities between the two. In this particular situation, the identical Italian terms were utilized. My real name is Jean, and she often refers to me as Bella Ragazza, which is a flirty gesture that makes me feel a little uneasy. While making fun of a Roberto Benigni album cover, the fictional character Jean referred to him as Bello Uomo. Both of them made use of the phrase no problemo many times throughout the conversation. Regarding the French far right, they both voiced their displeasure. Up until that point, it appeared to be flawless. On Saturday, I came across Jean, whose real name is John, online and had a conversation with him. I inquired as to whether or not he was aware of all that had occurred in the United States during that week. The fact that he turned so homophobic when I brought up the issue of marriage equality came as a surprise to me, because I had known him to be a decent individual. Although we had previously debated the topic of non-binary gender, the direct and violent homophobia with slurs and other things came as a surprise to me. I began to argue with him, and he became really furious, stating things that were both illogical and paranoid, such as, "If I come to your city, you'll hide with your friends so as not to show your face at the supermarket," and even urging me to stop talking to him. I asked him, "So we're not friends anymore?" in an attempt to figure out what the hell was going on, due to the fact that none of this made any sense to me, given our history of being friends for 4 years, his previous behavior of showing affection, and other similar things. The fact that he answered by saying that friendship is meaningless on the internet was strange to me, because we had met in person during the summer of 2011 and had been intending to meet again the previous year, but he was out of town at the time. After some time had passed, I later discovered that the fictitious character Jean had liked and commented on one of my photographs. All of the likes and comments were from the fictional character Jean, not the real-life Jean. This was another thing that I did not notice until I looked back at it with hindsight. I went to Facebook chat, and the only person there was Jean, who is her true name. During the time that he was telling me to stop talking to him, I inquired as to why he was enjoying my work. In a fit of rage, he answered by saying that he had not enjoyed anything. "Where do you see my name?" I responded by saying, "Well, not your real name, fictional character." Then he asked me, "So?" And then he commanded me to get off my back. During this point, I was completely bewildered and confused. Where was the explect that was taking place? Have you been experiencing a dissociative episode? My intention was to have a conversation with Jean, whose real name is Jean, when he got online. I wanted to observe how he behaved toward me, and if he was polite, I wanted to confront him about his actions under his other account. In the early hours of the morning, he appeared, and I hurried to have a conversation with him, feeling both profoundly uneasy and dying of curiosity. "I would like to speak with you. It's a little bit an emergency," I said. "Quickly." "Wow, what's going on?" It was during my conversation with Jean, who goes by her real name, that I went to the Facebook page. "You are the only person I am now speaking with, and this someone is you?" In response, he stated, "Not at all, thank you." To tell you the truth, I do not have a Facebook account that is known by my true name. This individual is merely a homonymous person. It was announced by him that he had not returned to Facebook until April, which was the month in which the account belonging to the fictional identity was reactivated. He was extremely upset when he found out that I had been talking to this person for 4 months, thinking it was him. He was even more upset when he found out that the guy was a dick, and that I had even for a moment thought that he was a dick as well. I am sure that you are asking how it took me so long to figure it out. The only thing I can explain is that I took it for granted that real name Jean and fictional character Jean were the same person. It never even occurred to me that they might not be the same person. The assumption that they were the same person was known as the null hypothesis. The possibility that they might not be the same person, that Jean, who is actually Jean, might be acting pretending, was so ridiculous that I never once considered the possibility. It is likely that you are still asking how I could have taken it for granted that Jean, whose real name is Jean, was my friend, when he offered so many signs that he was not. I must remind you of the extent to which he simply went along with everything that I said. I would talk about things that were specific to my friend, things that must have been completely incomprehensible to the individual I will now refer to as false Jean, and he would continue to act as if he understood what I was talking about. It seemed incomprehensibly weird to consider the possibility that he was lying, fake, or insane. Story number 6. Reading a few of these stories brings to mind an occurrence that took place a little more than a month ago, even though I haven't had a lot of scary things happen to me in my life. It is my policy to never accept a request from a person I have never met before, and as a result, I occasionally get requests from random people on Facebook. In any case, this random guy sends me a request, and although I am aware that we have never met before, my curiosity gets the better of me and I decide to look over his profile. It's not a huge deal. While I am reading down his main feed, I see that my name appears in a status that appears to be completely regular. I found myself in a state of shock at that very time. It was my complete name, and despite the fact that it is rather common, I do not know anyone else who has it. A little creepy to be sure, but it could just be a coincidence. Now I will proceed. Eventually I come across another status that describes how he would like to be with a girl that has the exact same features as me, including the same eyes, hair, and skin tone. Next, I discover a fake conversation that took place by text message, which gave the impression that I was involved with this individual. In addition, I discovered a few status updates that were about romantic activities that we had planned but never actually took place. It goes without saying that I ejected the expleet from the room, but not before snapping a few screenshots and blocking him. It is true that this individual resides in a huge city located a few states away from me. Nevertheless, I maintain the privacy of my social accounts, so I am hoping that he will not get in touch with me again. I have come to the realization that I probably ought to have also reported the individual. Nevertheless, I can honestly say that I did not want to trigger any kind of response from him in any way. Some background information: in the blue, when I was about 13 years old, this person connected me to his Facebook page. I am now 16 years old. When I inquired about his identity, he informed me that he had seen my profile photo and believed that I was not just attractive but also all that crap. In the year that has passed since we first started conversing, he makes an attempt to set me up with one of his friends on the grounds that you are so beautiful and he just has to have you. I had a partner at the time, so I denied the offer multiple times. After some time had passed, I uploaded a picture of us to my Instagram account, and he and his pals immediately began to criticize me in the comments area. The situation became really unsettling after all of them were blocked. Photos of my home were uploaded to Google Maps by them. I never disclosed my address to them, and I made sure that the location feature was turned off at all times. My first encounter with the guy threatened to rip my heart out of my chest. I reported him and blocked him subsequently. 1 year later, he confides in me that his love for me will never end. He is adamant about not leaving me alone. In the end, I decided to delete my Facebook account and am now planning to create a new one. It would be best if we did not meet, you weird Indian guy. Story number 7. When I turned 18, I made the journey to South Korea to attend university there. This took place more than 2 years ago, and I am now 21 years old. Despite the fact that there have been instances in the past in which certain guys have paid me unwelcome attention, the majority of them are aware that I am not interested in them. This, on the other hand, proved to be somewhat more unnerving. There is a language institute at the institution that I attend, and every single one of my classes was held in that particular institute at the time. It should come as no surprise that the majority of foreigners living in this region of Korea are familiar with or have attended this educational institution. Sometimes I get odd Facebook requests from guys who are interested in learning English or making acquaintances from other countries. This is not an unusual occurrence. The vast majority of the time I simply ignore them, unless we share a few friends or we have already interacted with each other. The individual who went by the name Nico sent me a friend request, and we shared a significant number of friends in common. He had also sent me a note in which he expressed his regret for the arbitrary nature of the request, but explained that he was simply attempting to make as many friends from other countries as he could, While I was thinking, what the heck, I accepted his offer and sent him a reply stating that it was not a problem for me. As far as I could tell from the images he posted on Facebook, he had a significant number of tattoos and piercings, and he claimed to be Japanese, but he had studied in Canada and was able to communicate effectively in English. Also a student from another country, he was enrolled at my university. After some time had passed, he sent me another message and I responded to it. In the course of our talk, he frequently brought up the possibility of us getting together for a movie or a cup of coffee, but I denied his offer. That is, until he started acting more belligerently, for no apparent reason. He would find a way to turn every statement I made into an argument, which became really tiresome pretty quickly, so I just ignored him. He would do this every time I made a comment. When he asked me if I had a boyfriend, I would always tell him that I did not, and then he would remark in a direct manner that we ought to be together. From this vantage point, I came to the conclusion that I did not really want anything to do with him. As a result, I politely declined the invitation on the grounds that I did not know him, that we would never meet, and that we had not even known each other for a week. He did not take my denial well and started insulting me based on my appearance and saying extremely descriptive things that he would do to me if he ever saw me. He did this because he was upset that I had refused to do something. It would appear that I was being foolish in not accepting his offer, since I would never be able to perform better than him, and he would try to convince me of that conclusion. After being so horrified by it that I could not believe it, I simply blocked and erased him from my Facebook account and tried to forget about it. I brought it up to a friend of mine, and she immediately understood who I was referring about without any further effort on my part. What appears to be the case is that I was not the first female that he added on Facebook and attempted to coerce into seeing him and becoming his girlfriend. I asked a couple more of my friends who we had mutual friends on Facebook, and they all detailed quite similar events involving this Nico. Our mutual friends on Facebook were all friends of each other. There was even a female who informed me that she had given him the benefit of the doubt and met with him. It turned out that he didn't even attend our university, but instead lived more than an hour away and would travel there on a regular basis, most likely to observe and obsess over who girl he would discover on Facebook next. Although he claimed to me that he was Japanese and had attended school in Canada, he claimed to her that he was born in the United States and had never traveled to Japan. Consequently, it is impossible to determine how much of what he said to anyone was in fact accurate. For some reason, this made me feel a little uneasy, but I made an effort not to let it bother me. The fact that I had blocked him meant that I would never see him again, so I forgot about it. That was until about a week or two later, when I received a message from him on Facebook on another account, saying that he would see me at school on that particular day. I had not even given any thought to the possibility that he might be observing me while I was at school, so this came as a bit of a shock to me. The notification was disregarded, and I proceeded to block the account. A few days later, I received a number of messages from various identities that claimed to be Nico's friends. These messages explained that Nico's account had been hacked and asked me to unblock him so that he could explain the situation and we could discuss it. I ignored these messages as well, but I continued to receive more of them, and I am very certain that each and every one of them was Nico himself attempting to get in touch with me in order to grab my attention. The more I ignored him, the more hostile and nasty the messages grew, and I could tell that the majority of the time when he claimed to have seen me, he was lying about it. "I saw you today at the library all day, you expletive," he would remark. He would also say various other things, messages such as, "You're a four-armed expletive who can't get laid," and several others of a similar nature are examples of such messages. Because I never used the school library to study, and even though I wear glasses, I never used them in public, I knew that he was clinging to a straw. I knew that he was trying to get his hands on something. As a result, I continued to block the accounts and made an effort not to let it disturb me, thinking that he was just some desperate idiot. I reasoned that he would eventually become disinterested in me and would then leave it go. That is, until one day when I was exploring the little convenience store that was located within the building after lessons had ended, with the intention of purchasing a drink on my way home. I went to the refrigerator to get a bottle of water, and when I closed the door, he was standing right next to me. I realized that I had opened the refrigerator. Although he was staring at me, he did not make any kind of statement. Due to the fact that I had never accepted to see him before, I had never seen him in person before. However, instantly I realized that it was him and I went into a panic. I had just left the store when I accidentally dropped the bottle. As a result of my fear that he would follow me and discover where I lived, I decided against walking home. Instead, I went back to school and remained in areas where there were a lot of people until a friend of mine arrived to meet me. In the years that followed, I had a few encounters with him when I was leaving class. He would just be standing there, doing nothing in particular, watching people as they walked by and staring at me intensely without any reason while he did so. When I went to and from school, I made it a point to be accompanied by my companions at all times, and I avoided being anywhere by myself for a period of time. However, after about a week, she stopped sending me messages, and I never saw him again after that. When I last heard from him, it was a year ago, when he sent me a message on yet another Facebook account, asking if we could be friends again since he had changed, and it was all a joke. He said that he had never been the same person before. It should come as no surprise that I chose to disregard the message, made the decision to block the account, and decided not to accept his request to become friends. Story number 8. This morning when I got home from school, I changed into my pajamas and browsed through Let's Not Meet, just as I do every single other day. Approximately 1 hour later, I receive a message on Facebook from a strange user that instructs me to go outside and find some fresh air. My investigation led me to discover that he had previously sent me a message in which he merely said, "Hi." Then, as I was half sleeping, I thought to myself, why not? Nothing will take place because I am not at home by myself, right? It's not true. After going outdoors, I notice a tall man with long hair who is wearing a shirt that says Children of Bodom. I am a huge fan of Children of Bodom, and because he didn't appear to be that much older than me, I assumed that he had attended my school in the past but had since graduated. Because he appeared to be very pleased to see me, I assumed that I did not know him. Nonetheless, I do not recall ever meeting him. Because I have a terrible memory, I just gave him a brief hug, but he ended up hugging me for a little bit longer than I had anticipated. It's kind of strange, but it's not really that strange, I thought to myself. He remarked, "Oh my God, you are so beautiful as a person." My response was, "Thank you. I was scared your Facebook pictures were going to be filtered. What in the world is going on?" At that moment, I became aware that I had no idea who this individual was. Nonetheless, he continued to maintain a firm hold on my hand. He said, "Come to my car. It's over there," referring to a small red car that was in a state of disrepair that was located at the finish of my block. "No, I have to take care of my sister," I responded to her. I was sitting by myself entirely. The moment he began dragging my arm, my warning bells began to ring. "Come on, just for a while," he said. It was "No, I have to go," that I responded. As soon as he grabbed my wrist, I rapidly whirled around to face my house and pulled myself free. After mumbling something, he grabbed my behind with a pretty firm hold and held it there. Because he was about 6 feet tall and I am 5 feet 3 inches tall, he was standing on top of me. In his words, "Let me lick your expletive," he declared. What in the world is going on? I suppose that the fight or flight response was the one that kicked in, and all I did was wriggle and wriggle until I finally broke free. I gave him a small punch to the shoulder and told him to get the expletive away from me. He grabbed my face and attempted to kiss me, but I stopped him. The good news is that my neighbor from the other side of the street witnessed everything and immediately began yelling at him. As soon as he released me, he dashed to his vehicle and raced off. I was approached by my neighbor who inquired about my well-being, escorted me back to my residence, brought me some water, and then contacted the authorities. The only thing we were able to supply was a small red Honda filled with a tall man who was wearing a CO shirt and had long hair. According to what they told me, they would phone me to let me know that I am safe if they found him. However, they have not yet phoned. Despite the fact that I am still terrified, I am thankful that my neighbor arrived home early. In addition, I have not lost my sanity.